In 1841, a 12-year-old slave was going through the gardens of his master in the country of Reunion and discovered a way to pollinate vanilla that had been introduced in his country in 1822 from the Jardin des Plantes in Paris. This particular orchid had baffled most of the botanists in those days because they didn't know how to pollinate it, and it just bloomed and died. This discovery that he made led to the mass growth of vanilla through the spice markets. Vanilla in many parts of the world is a very tedious and time-consuming process. It takes a lot of manpower. The production of vanilla is important in most cooking procedures and perfumes. Vanilla from certain parts of the world is more valued because of the process that it takes to make it. Being a vanilla lover myself, I have sought out to learn more about the vanilla and how it was produced. I discovered several years ago that vanilla was produced by an orchid plant, which I'm very interested in the different types of orchid. Vanilla has a long history and was first discovered in Mexico growing wild. The process it takes to pollinate the orchid blooms can be very tedious and time-consuming, and some of these uses of vanilla are in cooking. I'm now going to begin with the history of vanilla and its origin. Vanilla was first brought to Europe in 1519 by Hernando Cortez. Hernando Cortez had invaded Mexico and was served at that time a chocolate-flavored vanilla. It also had a little bit more spices in it too that they didn't quite go through detail with that. When Hernando Cortez and his troops had this chocolate, they were very fascinated by it, so they took some of the plant cutlings and they also took some of the ingredients for chocolate and took it back over to Europe and introduced it to the Europeans. The vanilla orchid actually became just an ornamental plant at that point in time because they didn't have the way to pollinate the orchid. In Mexico, the orchid is pollinated by a bee or hummingbirds, and they didn't have this particular process there in Europe because it was in a different location. In 1841, the slave boy named Edmund Alaves was a young man who took a lemon tree branch that has thorns on it and decided to go through and touch each one of the flowers with this thorn, which caused it to do hand pollination, which he didn't really understand. He just kind of was experimenting because he was really in love with his master. His master had taken care of him since he was a young boy. His mother had passed away. So he wanted to do something special for him and noticed that the orchid bloom only lasts 24 hours. So when he did this process, the next day they started producing bean pods, which we now know as the vanilla bean. In that part of the area, Reunion is close to Madagascar, which Madagascar produces the most coveted of all vanilla because it is the purest form of vanilla and has the most time-consuming process as well. The discovery of the vanilla in cooking was not just discovered in 1519, but also in 1837, a man named Alfred Bird discovered a way of producing custard because his wife really wanted some kind of different dessert. So he created this custard dessert so that it could satisfy. It's actually a custard powder that he produced. And there's a saying that 1 teaspoon of vanilla is the essential ingredient in hundreds of recipes, from cookies and cakes, ice cream, and cream soda. People are very, very fascinated with vanilla. Vanilla is in almost everything that we eat as far as desserts go. And if you get a recipe out, it'll say add 1 teaspoon of vanilla or a few drops of this. It's also perfumes have a lot of vanilla, and also air fresheners. You're riding in your car, your little tree has a little vanilla air freshener. And People will often tell you that vanilla has a very rich, creamy taste and aroma, and it can be found in all of your favorite things. And did you know that vanilla, the highest consumer of vanilla would be the Coca-Cola Company? Thank you, and hope you learned something.